home of horror podcast, home of horror, the home of horror podcast. And welcome back to the Home of Horror podcast. I am your host John, and this is episode 42, I believe. Kind of losing track now, getting up there. Wanted to hop in the studio real quick and talk about Dawn of the Dead, the original 1978. I don't talk about, I posted on my Instagram a little while ago of how I don't talk about how much I love the original Dawn of the Dead and the remake. I love both of them. So I wanted to come on and at least talk about the original now. Maybe do another episode on the remake. I was originally going to do both at the same time, but I decided to cut them at least into two parts here, or two episodes, because I believe they both deserve that. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm drinking a Golden Road Brewing Mango Cart. It's pretty good. Mango wheat ale. Not bad. This movie was released in the U.S. 1978. George A. Romero, obviously. This movie, I believe, has three different releases, three different cuts of it. The cut I own is the original 127 minutes, which Romero considers the definitive cut. And then I think there's a cut of Dario Argento's cut, which is like a little bit shorter. It's released under Zombie, I think it's called. There's a bunch of different versions of this movie, but I'm talking about the Romero cut, the original release. Produced by Dario Argento, I'm pretty sure, who did the soundtrack with the Goblins. He does all his music with them, I'm pretty sure, for all his movies, like Suspiria and I think The Church as well. And you can see his mark on this movie a little bit, especially with the blood. Anytime he does a movie, the blood is like almost bright red. You know what I mean? It's very watery, in a bright red color. He really emphasizes the color in the blood compared to all the other color in the movie. As far as zombie movies go, this is right up there for me. I love the original Night of the Living Dead, in black and white. I think it's really good. But this movie gets a little more gory and has some way better effects, obviously. I mean, this movie was made at least a decade later, But for its time, I mean, this was pretty revolutionary because it just, the way Tom Savini does the effects. Obviously, we know him from a bunch of different movies. He's also in the movie as well as part of the biker gang. He just knows what he's doing, right? And we get that like right from the beginning of the movie with like, they're in. It starts off in this apartment complex, kind of in the projects of a city, and it shows cops going through and people are getting their head blown off and shit, and it's pretty intense. I mean, when this came out, that was probably pretty hardcore. The effects were great. It was a lot of cutbacks and cut twos and stuff like that, but it worked really well, and probably one of the first times you saw like heads literally being blown up, and that must have looked really cool in theaters, I'd have to guess. Overall, Savini did a great job with the effects. There are, some of the zombies kind of look blue, and I think he had done an interview and talked about it where the makeup is actually gray. I think, he was probably trying to make them look as dead as possible. But on film, back then, the editing tools weren't amazing or anything like that. So I think that it just kind of tinted blue on screen, which it didn't like mess the movie up or anything, but you can 100% tell that it just feels blue. Like all the zombies kind of look blue, and except for like some zombies that haven't been dead as long, and they just kind of have still have their color. But yeah, a lot of them look like really blue. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I wonder if they ever like remastered it now, if they could crunch that up a little bit and maybe bring the gray out. I'm not really sure, but still, the makeup looks really good. The zombies look really good. Any effects where like the zombies bite, it looks great. The ripping of the flesh, and I mean it still holds up to this day. I think it's still really used that way in a lot of zombie movies, even the 2004 version. Just a really good story too. I really like the idea of these characters having to hide out in this. Well, not even really have to. They just kind of choose this mall to hide out in, barricade themselves in, and they notice that there's a bunch of survival kits in there. And I guess if it was the zombie apocalypse, that's kind of where you would choose, right? You would kind of say, hey, a mall kind of has everything you need. It's got restaurants with freezers working. It's got food. It's got clean clothes. It's got, you know, products for, showering. It's got everything. It's got beds. It's got, everything you need to make livable. And it's funny, at the beginning of the movie, they kind of, one of the characters kind of says, oh, I think it's, when they see the mall, they're kind of like, I think it's one of those shopping centers. Because, those malls were probably just getting big in the late 70s, I'd have to guess. Um, I don't know how big, I don't know when the mall was invented, but, probably not too far off from that, where you had all these stores into one building. Um, so then it was probably a really creative and new idea for a movie, uh, to have a movie take place. And why not a zombie movie, right? It's a perfect idea. You barricade yourself instead of into like just one house, or kind of brings the sense of like, oh, now we can really show a lot of zombies. We can show a lot more things in the plot, I think, besides just dialogue. You have a lot of scenes in this movie where they're running around and like, kind of having fun almost. It's a little quirky, it's very quirky actually. It's really funny, like, and the music goes along with it. You kind of take a break from the zombies a little bit, and you realize like, oh, these guys are having fun, like cooking food and setting up their new home, and like putting on new clothes, and they even find like, the bank part of the mall where they start taking all the money, and they're kind of just like, oh, just in case, you never know, the world gets going again, right? Because the whole movie kind of starts out that way, right? Where the zombie apocalypse has already pretty much started. Um, it's kind of a play off Night of the Living Dead. It's not a sequel or anything, but it kind of plays off like, hey, this has been going on a little bit and it's getting bigger and bigger. But you still have the news outlets giving news, and the radio shows giving news that way as well. So you're like, it's kind of almost easing into it. Whereas a lot of zombie movies now, it's like this just this sudden outbreak and then a burst of just energy in the movie, where everything kind of gets taken over at once. But with this, it's kind of like a slow burn into it. It starts out with like the newscast talking about what they should do to make this better, where people should go, how they should kill them. It shows like the hunters like having almost kind of having a ball, like hunting these things and getting up in their outfits with the orange and the flannels and stuff like that, which I can relate to because I live in Maine. So I feel like if a zombie outbreak ever did happen, that's exactly what it would be like around here. But yeah, so it's kind of just eased in, like people don't really know what to do yet. They don't know if it's going to be this long-term thing, or if there's going to be a cure, or if there's going to, it almost seems like, hey, we're going to beat this, It doesn't happen very quickly, which I kind of like, because it gives you this, at the beginning of the movie, it gives you a sense of like, oh, we're kind of learning what's going on, and there's a few scientists that are like, oh, we really need to take care of this now, and others being like, well, it's not that big of a deal yet, and that kind of thing. But it sets up really cool for the mall scenes, because you know, there's not a lot of people, there's not a lot of zombies in the mall, so they have this opportunity to kind of clear it out and then barricade the doors. And it's still at the same time, even though it's slow building, there's still some really like parts that kind of make you panic while you're watching. Even being a movie that's this old now, you kind of panic when there's a thrill to it when they're trying to barricade the doors with the trucks and stuff like that. There's very close calls where they almost get bit, stuff like that. And not to mention, I want to say great actors. I mean, you have huge actors in this movie. Um, Obviously, Ken Foree being one of them. He's like, he was in the Rob Zombie's Halloween. And then obviously we have the guy who plays Roger, Scott, jeez, Scott Renegier or something like that, which he has like his, the famous zombie look when he gets bit, and he turns. And, it's a slow turn for him. They actually, once he gets bit, it's kind of like they don't really care right off the bat. They're like, oh, we know he's going to turn, but we have a lot to do. So they kind of take their time, and he still helps them. But once he turns, I mean, you get this old grayish, really good makeup effects by Savini, where he just completely looks different. Once he's laying in bed and the covers are over him, and when he finally gets up, he just has that. They've made masks out of it, and it's on all the shirts and stuff. His signature look. That's like the look for Dawn of the Dead. I feel like that's a very big scene, breakout scene for the movie, and it looked really awesome. Obviously, he gets shot by Peter, who's Ken Foree. But yeah, really well done. And it's I've heard a lot of people. There's a the underlying theme of this movie, I guess, would be like consumerism because we get this cool backstory of these zombies on how like they're kind of tied to their own instinctual, like their instincts, their natural instincts, and like things that they did in life that they were just kind of like almost a zombie anyway, right? Going to this mall was one of them. Shopping. The whole consumerism thing where the idea is that these zombies are going back to the mall because it's what they did in their regular life. It's just this natural instinct they have to go back. So I guess it does touch on consumerism in that sense where America's is or the whole world really is kind of stuck on consumerism and material items and that kind of thing. Um, which they show that with the main characters as well, even though they're not zombies. These guys running, these three guys and this one girl, Galen Ross, who plays Francine, and then obviously Stevens, the other character. I can't remember who plays him, but they're running around the mall, like I said, kind of just indulging in the material items, right? Getting the money, even though they don't need it anymore. Dressing up in fancy clothes, and I mean they're there for quite a while. I mean they build an entire home in the top, in the top floor of this place, and they just kind of live the life for a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how much time has passed, but enough where Francine, is pretty close to having a baby, and so we're talking at least a few months here. And they set this place up like it's an actual home, so they're kind of living large for a little bit here, and it's kind of cool to see just them indulge and set up their own restaurant where they can eat, and they still have good food. The freezers are still working, the lights are still working. So like I said, we're not that far into the apocalypse. It's not like it's every man for himself quite yet. We get that a little bit at the end of the movie where the biker gang comes in and figures out that there's this mall, and again with the consumerism, when this biker gang comes and tries to, at the end of the movie, I know I'm jumping a little ahead, but I'm not really trying to touch on all the plot points here. I'm just you know just talking about the movie really. But when they come, it's the same type of thing with the consumerism thing. It's they go in and really, Peter, Ken's character Peter says, they're not here for us. They're here for all the things. They just want to stock up on stuff, and they're here to, and you see them. These guys roll in like 20 or 30 deep on bikes, and they burst into the mall, and they take the first things they're taking are like the jewelry off even the zombies off they're taking their wallets and things like that. I mean, it really is all about that. It's just kind of symbolizing, hey, this is like what still matters. And maybe it's just because, I think that is the underlying theme, but I think maybe it's also just because it's just kind of getting going and, people aren't worrying about food and water just quite yet. A little bit, but not quite. Um, because if they were, I don't think our main characters would be stopping at a mall either. I think they'd stop at the mall to stock up, take that helicopter, and get the hell out of there, right? But we get some um, great kills in this movie from beginning to end. Um, really beautifully shot. The music's really cool. Like I said, it's kind of funny. There's a lot of funny parts in this. It just, it doesn't get too serious until obviously the beginning's pretty serious, but then it doesn't get too serious until Roger gets bit. Um, once he gets bit, it's kind of like this shock factor where you're like, oh shit, now it's almost like they weren't being as careful as they should have been. And it's cool because these zombies obviously are very slow and they can get around, and our main characters can maneuver pretty easily, but still there's always that's the thrill of it, I think, right? There's always that little piece of you that you should have in the back of your head saying, oh, I could get bit. I shouldn't be too I still got to be cautious. I shouldn't be too loose here because there's always that you should always have that in the back of your head, like this could happen. And then obviously Roger gets bit and everything changes, right? He's going down. Um, but yeah, other than that, like a lot of the scenes in the mall are just kind of like them trying to live, and it's just kind of like a fun movie in that sense. And like when they barricade all the doors and they set all that up, they got to kill all the zombies that are inside. It's not too many, but it's to the point where like, after a while you're like, hey, we got to clean this place up because these things are going to start rotting and shit. So pretty much they just use the big freezers in the mall as like giant tombs for these bodies, so they don't just start withering away and rotting, and you'd have that horrible stench. Um, so the movie is written very well in that sense, where you'd have to go through all these steps. It's kind of like a little guide to what you would have to do. You can't just go out and bury these things because you've already barricaded yourself in. And they have access to the top and to the roof, and they have the helicopter, but low on gas. It's just all those. It's just a look at the very beginning of the apocalypse and what it would look like. And I think that's really cool. I think shows like The Walking Dead, and like movies, even with the remake of Dawn of the Dead, where the zombies are quick and the outbreak is just like all of a sudden and everything's frantic and everybody's freaking out and there's not much time to think. Whereas this one, it's kind of like, oh, let's slow down, because those movies that happen that way, I think there's a sense of like the urgency is there, but it's especially with like Walking Dead, when you get a couple seasons in, it's like, well, now you got to really try to thicken the plot here because they've done everything. You've seen them kill zombies. And then they get to the point where they're getting off zombies and dealing with the people, bad people now, which I get, and that's cool. But it's like, how many seasons? How long can you carry that on? Once we get to the end and the biker gangs there, we really see how the sense of urgency is there now. Now there's a reason to be scared. There's a reason to be worried about our main characters. And we see that happen. Then all of a sudden, Steven gets bit, and you got to leave him behind. And obviously, Francine's upset about that. And now these zombies are getting in to where they live because they've barricaded it and they've put it, and it's all ladders and stuff like that. But you got to remember, like I said, these zombies are instinctual. Just they're And the last few months, Steven's been living up in this mall. He knows. So when he turns into a zombie, his little instinct that he's going off, his natural instinct, his bare minimum instinct is kind of like, oh yeah, just go this way because this is where you've been living. You've done this, you've done this a couple hundred times now. So he knows where to go, and that leads all the other zombies to where they've been hiding out. Because what they do, it's actually really brilliant. They build a fake wall to their door in their area of the mall in the on the top floor, just to kind of make it look like, all the other zombies would just walk right past it, or anybody that was human would just walk right past it. You wouldn't think twice to just start knocking on this wall. So they build this fake wall, but Steven, having that instinct, goes right for it. Takes the herd of zombies with him. Now they're fucked. Now you got to do something different. So that's where a little bit of worry and the thrill starts to set in for the movie. What are these characters going to do? It's down to just two of them. It's down to Francine. It's down to Peter. What are you going to do? And obviously, a little bit, jumping back a little bit, we have Peter, his famous line of the movie, right? When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. That's what his grandfather used to tell him. Old voodoo things, which I thought was cool because, that's kind of how the zombie culture started, right? Was with voodoo and stuff like that. Go back to movies like Serpent and the Rainbow, which touches on voodoo and the undead a lot, stuff like that. So it's cool that Romero still throws that in there for the story. But yeah, you get that famous line, right? When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth, and that's such a clean, crisp line, dude. And it's gonna live on forever. I mean, it's legendary, and that actor's legendary for it. He also looks super weird young. He almost looks old, but he's not yet. You think of that. You think of Ken the way he is now, the way he looks in I think he's in Devil's Rejects as well, and Rob Zombie's Halloween. You picture him like that almost, not the way he looked back then, where he was like already losing his hair, but he was way younger. He had this weird old young look, but such a legendary character, such a legendary line. Which probably just catapulted his career after that, as far as being a horror legend goes. But yeah, at the end of the movie, we get the zombies breaking in, and you think Peter's gonna stay behind. He takes the little 3-shooter or whatever he has, and he barricades himself in his room, and he's gonna blow his own head off because he doesn't want to get eaten. And Francine, she's learned this entire time from Steven how to fly the helicopter. So you're like, oh, she's gonna get out of here. He's gonna off himself. And just kind of at that last second, you get that fight in Peter. He starts blowing heads off, and all of a sudden it just turns into he just starts fucking zombies up, bro. Just fucking them up. He just starts left hook, right hook, fucking, high kick, sweet chin music. You know what I mean? He just starts fucking zombies up, and it's so funny. It's such a weird, quirky route to go, which just fits with the movie so well. He just starts throwing haymakers and laying zombies out. He just doesn't even get touched. He's dodging them like Ali, man. He's just going hard, and it's so funny. He does that all the way up to the roof, and he just keeps going. Haymaker, haymaker, sweet chin music. It's fucking so funny to me. Such a funny way to go out, and the music kind of gets more intense, and then he finally jumps in the helicopter, and after that, it's kind of just like, oh, where to now? Where's the next stop? We're just 2 people left. Let's go. But yeah, such a cool ending to the movie. Just a great movie overall. I really think there's something to that consumerism thing. I don't think I really, even when I started this episode, I don't think I was thinking of consumerism as much as I am now. But the more you think about it, that's especially with the biker gang just taking money and taking wallets and jewelry. It's kind of touches base on that. It's all about a little bit of greed here, a little bit of envy, and the shopping mall is a perfect example of that, I guess. But yeah, one of my favorite zombie films for sure, man. So good, killer. And like I said, I might touch on the 2004 version because I like the characters in that too. Um, and it's a little bit more intense, I think. But as far as a better movie goes, I mean, the original is just so good. I think it was revolutionary for first of all zombie films and just horror films in general. As far as gore goes, special effects was really there, and this was a couple years before The Thing, when they really ramped up special effects. But this was one I think that's not talked about as much as it should be because there's some really gory stuff. And I think I would like to talk to someone that saw this in '78, and just be like, did you see that in theaters? Like, what the hell was that like? I mean, people must have been blown away, you know? Um, but yeah, overall, great movie. I love it. Um, Definitely top three in zombie movies. Um, doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think. I know people love it, but just as far as what I see online and social media and stuff like that, not a lot of people posting about it. And I know this movie's pretty hard to get, like the original version, as far as like Blu-ray. I think it was all discontinued in the U.S. I think it still is, so it's kind of hard to get your hands on it. I luckily have like a like a little remastered version that they did in 2004. I'm sure they did that because the new one was coming out, and I think that was the last time they did anything with it. And now it's just kind of been discontinued, so you can get your hands on it, but it might take a little bit. I'd like to get it on Blu-ray and see that. Maybe in the future we'll get another release from it. Maybe someone will do it. But great movie, awesome effects. I mean, Savini kills it. Romero's a legend. Argento is just a great producer. Great soundtrack all around. Just an A movie for sure. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys like this movie, if you like the remake better, do you like this one? Do you not like it at all? What's your favorite zombie movies? All that. Throw it in the comments. Get that algorithm going. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. This was episode 42. Yeah, and until next time, I appreciate you guys stopping by. Peace. Home of horror, the home of horror podcast. Home of horror, the home of horror podcast.